Broken Arrow has turned out to be as successful a game as it is controversial due to some missing features and lots of cheaters in multiplayer. So while its number of sales is only matched by the number of deserters in its main multiplayer mode, something developers are about to address, Chinese players review bomb it due to some of their players getting banned by those same developers. And as I played Broken Arrow, it became more and more obvious to me that many players don't fully understand how to leverage the game's victory point system. So in this video guide, I am going to both explain the system in detail and give you advice on how to use it to secure a win for your team. Additionally, developers of the game have a lot of community requests to add to the game, along with some basic functions and features, which they made a written statement about while releasing a new patch. More on this later in the video, and of course I will show you some other gameplay tips as well. I also want to tell you about a giveaway of 10 keys for other games published by Slitherine, which is included in the chat during this video's premiere on my channel due to their 25th anniversary. I will give out 10 random keys for games like Starship Troopers Terran Command, Panzer Corps 2 and Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. If you get a key for a game you already own, I hope you will gift it to one of your gaming friends. And if you want some specific strategy game published by Slitherine, you should know these are on sale up to 80% off on Steam until the 15th of July. Now let's first address what are victory points and how they work in Broken Arrow. These victory points are the only way in which teams score against each other, and the team with more points wins the match. Interestingly enough, the game was designed with a draw situation in mind, and I have had it happen to me several times. So how do players gain victory points? There are two distinct ways, but both of them award points accumulated during a single phase of the game at the end of each such phase. These are shown graphically, by the way, on the top of the screen, and you can track your team's current points and projected new points at a glance. One way of earning victory points is holding more capture points across the map than your opposing team. These are indicated by the flags icon. The other way of earning victory points is destroying enemy units worth more recruitment points and losing less of your own, expressed again in recruitment point costs. This is indicated by the skull icon for victory points and the two bars with blue and red numbers for the amount of eliminated units as recruitment points. What creates the most confusion and where you can leverage this system is the fact that victory points increase with each phase of the match. So in the first phase of the match, holding more capture points can get you up to 3 points, and destroying more enemies can also give you up to 3 points. But in the second phase, which also lasts for 15 minutes, those points double. So now holding more flags can earn you up to 6 points, and destroying more enemies can earn you up to 6 points too. The third phase and the last 15 minutes of the match takes this to the extreme with 9 points, meaning that in total the last phase of the match has 18 points in play, which is the same as the total of the entire two previous phases put together, 3 plus 3 and 6 plus 6. This is why it is possible to end up in a draw, as the total amount of points across the entire match is 36, an even number. Now, how does this information help you in creating different strategies for winning in matches in Broken Arrow? I will explain and give you some tips, but first let's go over some of the news, patch notes and community opinions on the issues currently in the game. First of all, the latest patch has added new player versus environment scenarios, a sort of tower defense for 1, 2 or 3 players on Kaliningrad and Ruda maps, as well as the option to change map size in skirmish and custom lobbies. Second, the balancing changes relate to reduced sprint cooldown from 60 to 30 seconds for every infantry and recon unit that is made up of just soldiers. This is meant to help players more easily avoid artillery with infantry units and run away from armored vehicles. Some players will obviously disagree, as different skill levels have different points of view on the game's balance. Personally, I think it just adds more for players to manage and lets faster players gain an edge more easily over slower players who like to strategize and execute their tactics but lack the APM for quick micromanagement. I always saw Broken Arrow as a safe haven for armchair generals, so I dislike this change and the direction it is moving the game to. You are free to agree or disagree in the comments. In fact, I welcome a discussion about this topic. The one important part about the balance is the current problem of players prioritizing decks with AC 130 gunships and strong air units, typically referred to as the spooky aircraft rush. The higher you climb up the ELO ladder in multiplayer, the more often will you be on the receiving end of this tactic. It is in high need of a hot balance fix in my opinion. Also, the players who depend on this tactic to improve their ELO rating might as well uninstall the game, if that is how they plan to keep playing and ruining everyone's experience with the game. The third part of this latest patch is said to have improved the anti-cheat system, which is said to now be more efficient at detecting cheats and hacking software. Developers also allocated more staff to this issue and made an entire post about it, especially because players have started to attack each other on a nationality-based level, and there was that whole ban of a Chinese team. Oh, and if you missed the info, over 2,000 players have been banned on the suspicion of cheating since the launch of Broken Arrow. Considering that was just 3 weeks ago, this is about 100 players a day. To me, this is a lot, and I wish people would stop cheating in games, as the only person they are cheating is themselves, as winning by using cheats just fills your life with lies and robs you of an actual real gameplay experience. I made a video on this topic years ago, and I will link it up here and down in the description. But what about those other major issues, you might ask, like no saving in single player or people leaving mid-game in multiplayer? Well, for those, we only got a promise that the developers are working on adding save and load functionality, and that players leaving matches will be given a penalty that will keep getting worse the more they leave without surrendering, which is an upcoming feature. Releasing a game without a save and load function on PC in 2025 is, well, astounding, and the backlash from players is totally understandable and justified. Now, just as I gave you 10 tips in my previous video on Broken Arrow, linked up here and down in the description, let me give you some tips on victory points mechanics. In the first phase of the match, you don't have to rush to take over control points at all costs, as it gains you no benefit except to set up defensive positions with infantry, for example, or anti-air systems in nearby forests. These defensive positions then get scouted and eroded as the first phase of the match goes on, and if the enemy does a big push 30 seconds before the end of a phase, you might just lose the capture points moments before you were to gain victory points from them. This is a tactic I have seen done many times by both my opponents and team members. I personally rarely rush ahead, as I have yet to master the scouting gameplay, so I'm one of those defensive players who digs in and tries to keep his capture points during a match. On rare occasions, I do jump ahead and even ambush enemies in their spawn points, but these are few matches and far in between. What seems to work best is to focus not on defense or rushing or capturing, but on the rock paper scissors counter mechanics versus the opponent from the enemy team that is playing the same area of the map you are active on. Bringing short range anti-air to take out their choppers, using planes to destroy their transports before they deploy in a building or ground, using long range artillery against their long range anti-air units, and so on. Only at the last few minutes before the end of a phase can you save up some points to do a massive ground assault led by tanks and other armored vehicles to clear out and take over a capture point. This way, you both increase the chances to gain victory points from destroying more enemy units and having more capture points at the exact end of a phase when these points are actually gained. This is why using a nuclear weapon at the end of a phase to strike a highly populated section of the map and destroy many enemies is a great way to surge forward in points. Especially if you destroy 2 or even 3000 recruitment points worth of enemy units with one strike. Since the second phase is worth far more points, you can just play for the long game, not fight for capture points in the first phase, slowly build up your arsenal of units, and plan out an attack path by scouting enemy lines to prepare for phase 2. After that, you can do the same for the third phase as it is worth the most points. If you have your own tips for maximizing your chances of gaining victory points, I invite you to share those with us all in the comments of this video. Now, the 2 extra tips I want to give you are about using smoke in resupply. Since attack choppers with long-range anti-tank missiles are the best counter to tanks and other armored vehicles, the way in which you can keep them alive for a bit longer in such a fight, until help arrives or to draw in enemy choppers into crossfire by ground units, is to stay in your smoke screen for as long as it lasts. For example, if you are in the open trying to move tanks or other types of armored vehicles into a position and an enemy attack chopper starts to target you with long-range anti-tank missiles, you don't just disrupt their lock-on by deploying smoke. You also hide your tank from their view. And the only way for the attack chopper to regain lock-on and view of your tank would be to move right on top of it. This is a position from which your tank can use its alternate weapon to deal damage, or the enemy will enter the range of some of your other units. The second extra tip is about management of supplies for your long-range artillery or AA units, because these are often hidden in forests, but their missile trails and shell fire do give away their position. This of course forces you to move them after a few shots or risk getting blown up by enemy cruise missiles or long-range fire. But what about the supplies? Well, you can move those too, but you do have to remember to keep the trucks that brought them close to the supplies. Of course, I am not advising firing from positions where you are rearming from stockpiles, but using those trucks to move the supplies to a new location before you start a new firing cycle. This way, you can always have supplies waiting for a gun or missile tube at a new location from which they can fire once they have finished reloading and immediately head to a new location once the fire mission is over. For more tips on Broken Arrow or news on other RTS games, check out the cards on the screen or links in the description. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all happy gaming.